The sun hadn't even reached its highest point when the ground began to tremble. It wasn't an earthquake, it was the sound of tens of thousands of men marching towards death. Within a few hours, the largest army Rome had ever assembled would cease to exist, and the person responsible for this was not Roman. He was a man who crossed impossible mountains, defied the logic of war, and turned strategy into destruction. His name was Hannibal Barca. And on that day, he would not only face Rome, he was going to humiliate her. But before you understand how this happened, you need to understand one thing. Rome was not used to losing, much less to be destroyed. For decades, the Roman Republic expanded its dominion with brutal discipline and an almost arrogant confidence in its own war machine. Its legions were organized, resilient, and ruthless. And then Hannibal appeared, son of a legendary commander raised with a single purpose: to hate Rome. From a young age, he swore that he would be responsible for overthrowing it. And unlike many generals, he did not think like Rome. He thought beyond the obvious. When the war began, what we now know as the Second Punic War, Rome expected a traditional confrontation: predictable battlefronts, calculated movements, inevitable victories. But Hannibal didn't play that game. He crossed the Iberian Peninsula, traversed southern Gaul, and did the unthinkable. He led an entire army, including war elephants, across the Alps. Yes, the Alps, mountains that many considered insurmountable. And yet, he succeeded, not without losses, not without suffering, but he arrived, and when he arrived in Roman territory, he didn't ask for permission. He started destroying everything. The first battles were a warning. Rome ignored it. He thought it was luck. He thought he was an exception. But each confrontation revealed a clear pattern. Hannibal did not fight like the other generals. He was studying the enemy. He manipulated the terrain. He turned mistakes into deadly traps. And Rome was falling for all of them. Then came the decision that would change everything. Tired of defeats, Rome assembled a colossal army, something around 80,000 soldiers. It was more than just strength. It was a statement, a desperate attempt to crush Hannibal once and for all. Leadership was handed over to two consuls, including Lucius Aemilius Paulus, who believed in caution, and Caio Terencio Varro, who wanted a quick and decisive victory. Two leaders, two perspectives, a gigantic army, and an enemy who had already proven that size meant nothing. The stage was set, an open field near the city of Cannae, flat terrain, perfect for Rome. Perfect. Too perfect because while Rome saw an advantage, Hannibal saw an opportunity. And what would happen there? It wouldn't just be a battle. It would be a brutal lesson in strategy, a trap so perfect that it's still being studied today. But there's one detail that changes everything: a mistake. One single mistake by Rome. That's what Hannibal had been expecting from the start. Rome's plan seemed simple: advance with full force, crush Hannibal with numbers, and end the war right there. But there was a problem. They were about to fight exactly the way the enemy wanted. On the morning of the battle, the Roman army positioned itself in a massive formation. A compact human wall with tens of thousands of soldiers pressing forward. It was the classic Roman style: brute force, continuous pressure, inevitable progress, and at the heart of it all, the certainty that more men meant victory. On the other side, Hannibal Barca organized his troops in an unusual way. In the center, he placed his weakest soldiers, Gauls, Iberians, men who, on paper, had no chance against the legions. And on the sides, he positioned his true strength, African veterans, highly disciplined, and even more importantly, his cavalry, quick coordinates, airplane. If you had observed that formation at that moment, you would have thought that Hannibal was making a serious mistake, and that was exactly what he wanted: to create an illusion. When the battle began, the Romans advanced like an avalanche, pushing the Carthaginian center, gaining ground, feeling that victory was near. And then something curious began to happen. Hannibal's center began to retreat slowly in a controlled manner, as if he were giving in to the pressure. But that wasn't weakness, it was calculation. As the Romans advanced deeper and deeper, their formation began to lose its shape. The line was tightening, the soldiers were getting increasingly cramped. No room to maneuver, without a clear view of the field. And yet, they kept moving forward because everything indicated that they were winning. But at the edges of the field, the situation was different. Hannibal's cavalry went into action, and it was quick, violent, decisive. They crushed the Roman cavalry without allowing for reorganization, without allowing a coordinated escape. And then came the most important move. They didn't stop. They spun around. They circled the battlefield, and they disappeared from Roman sight, not center. The Romans were now deeply involved, surrounded by enemies ahead, but completely blind to what was happening around them. And then the perfect moment arrived. The African troops began to advance inland, not forward, but to the sides, slowly closing the space like doors. Closing, it was a siege, but it's not complete. Yet not yet. And then the cavalry returned, attacking from behind at the perfect moment. Now yes, the trap was complete. The Romans were surrounded on all sides, no space, no way out. Without effective leadership, what seemed like an inevitable victory, it was turning second by second into an absolute disaster. And the worst was yet to come, because Hannibal didn't just want to win, he wanted to erase that army from history. Now, it was no longer a battle, it was a slaughter, surrounded on all sides. The Roman soldiers began to realize the truth. They weren't winning, they were prisoners, and there was no way out. In the midst of that chaos, tens of thousands of men were crammed into an ever-shrinking space, shields locked, bodies stuck together, no room to fight, no space, not even to breathe. Rome's numerical advantage, its greatest strength, had become its worst weakness. The more men, it was impossible to move at all. Escape was impossible. Meanwhile, Hannibal Barca's troops executed the plan with almost mechanical precision. The African veterans were pressing down the flanks. The cavalry attacked from behind, and the center, which used to recede. Now he was pushing back. It was a total collapse, without coordination, without space, and without a clear view of the field. The Romans began to fight individually, every man for himself. Each group is isolated, no control, without a strategy. And this, against an enemy that was still fighting as a unit. The outcome was inevitable. The heat was increasing, the air grew heavy, the ground was becoming slippery. It was indescribable. Metal contra metal, shouting, panic, despair. But here's the most brutal detail of all. Many Roman soldiers did not die fighting. They were crushed to death, suffocated by their own upbringing, unable to lift the sword, without even seeing who killed them. This was not just defeat, it was annihilation. Over the course of hours, the net closed in more and more, like a press. Slow, ruthless, inevitable. Some tried to escape, they couldn't. Others tried to resist, they were swallowed. Among the dead was Lucius Aemilio, Paulus, one of the leaders of Rome, fallen on the field along with thousands of his men. The other consul, Gaius Terentius Varro, managed to escape, but what did he leave behind? It wasn't an army, it was a cemetery. Estimates suggest that more than 50,000 Romans died on that single day. Some reports mention even higher numbers. It was something almost impossible to understand. For comparison purposes, Rome had never lost so much in such a short time, and even so, Hannibal did not lose control. There was no chaos on the Carthaginian side. There was no break in formation. The execution was completed from beginning to end. This moment, the double siege at Cannae, would become one of the greatest examples of military strategy in history, studied for centuries, copied by generals, admired. even by his enemies. But there is one question that transcends time. If Hannibal destroyed the largest army in Rome, if he completely crushed his enemy, if he proved to be superior on every level, why didn't he just destroy Rome right there? This is the part that almost nobody understands, and it completely changes the way you see this story, faced with a massacre of that magnitude. The question seems inevitable. Why didn't Hannibal Barca march directly to Rome? He had done the impossible. The largest army of the Republic has been destroyed. Proven that Rome could bleed, it has been proven that Rome could fall, and yet he didn't go. For centuries, historians have tried to answer this. Some say there was a lack of resources. Others said their army was exhausted. Some believe he was expecting reinforcements from Carthage, which never came. But there is a more unsettling interpretation. Hannibal was not fighting to destroy Rome in a single blow. He was trying to break her down little by little, to force her allies to abandon her, disassemble your system. And for a moment, it looked like it would work. After the catastrophe at Cannae, several Italian cities began to switch sides. Confidence in Rome has been shaken. Fear spread. But Rome did not do what any other empire would have done. She did not give up. He didn't negotiate. He did not back down. She adapted. Instead of confronting Hannibal directly, he began to avoid him. He cut off their supplies. He attacked their alliances. He refused to give him another decisive battle. It was frustrating. This is it. But it worked. This new type of strategy became associated with Quintus Fabius Maximus, the man who understood something essential. You don't beat a genius by playing his game. Over time, Hannibal's momentum began to wane. Without enough reinforcements, without consistent support, unable to force Rome into another battle like Cannae. And then, the war has changed direction. While Hannibal remained in Italy, Rome took the war all the way to Carthage. Years later, the Roman general Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus would do exactly what Hannibal had done before, to take the fight to enemy territory. The final confrontation would take place at the Battle of Zama, and this time, it would be Rome that emerged victorious. But none of that erases what happened in Cannae, because in a single day, Hannibal not only won, he redefined war. It showed that strategy trumps brute force, intelligence trumps numbers, and a brilliant commander can transform a disadvantage into a military masterpiece. Even today, military academies study Cannae. Generals analyze every move, and Hannibal's name continues to be cited as synonymous with strategic genius. But perhaps the greatest lesson is not in the victory, and yes, in what came after, because even after being crushed, even after losing tens of thousands of men, Rome did not fall. She learned. He adapted, and it came back stronger. And that's why this story still matters. It's not just about war, it's about resilience regarding intelligence. And what about the price of underestimating an enemy? If you've made it this far, you've already realized some of the greatest victories in history. These are not the kinds of wars that end one, but those are the ones that change everything. If you enjoy this type of story, where strategy, power, and decisions change the course of the world, subscribe to the channel, because there are still many battles, empires, and characters that you need to meet. And the next story, it could be even more surprising.